Mother-in-law unlocked our front door with a key I never gave her and tried to take my son, so I called CPS and handed her a court order. She said, "I just want to see my grandson." Then she showed up, with a camera crew. The video went viral. The threats came next. And then? Child Protective Services knocked on my door. This isn't just a story, it's a nightmare. The sudden arrival of my mother-in-law into our home occurred each and every morning. "I'm here to inspect how you're taking care of my child," she exclaimed with a smile. Despite the fact that I had replaced the locks, she showed up with an extra key. In a fit of rage, I made one last move, and when she attempted to enter the building the following time, she was confronted with a court order that caused her to scream. It never occurred to me that getting married to David would also give me the opportunity to marry his mother, Margaret. She seemed to believe that she had an open invitation to our lives and our home from the minute we said "I do," which was the moment we had our wedding. It was a subtle beginning, with a knock here and a visit there. But before long, it became a daily routine. Every single morning, without fail, Margaret would sneak into our home without us having to ask her to come in. I would be in the midst of feeding our child, with my hair disheveled and still wearing my pajamas, when I would look up and see her standing at the doorway with that recognizable grin on her face. "I'm here to inspect how you're taking care of my child," she would proclaim, her eyes searching the room for any indication of disorder or neglect. "I'm here to inspect how you're taking care of my child." With all my heart, I made an effort to be patient. After all, she was a member of the family. On the other hand, her persistent intrusions started to wear on me. It wasn't just that I didn't have any privacy, it was also the underlying message that I wasn't good enough, that I couldn't take care of my own family without her supervision. I made the decision to handle the matter one morning, immediately following a night in which I was unable to sleep with the infant. "Margaret," I started, attempting to maintain a steady tone in my voice. "I have a lot of respect for your concern, but I require some space. Could you kindly give me a call before you pay me a visit?" To indicate that she was taken aback, she raised an eyebrow. "Dear, I'm only trying to be of assistance. There is no need to send invitations to family." The realization that this talk was not going to lead somewhere beneficial caused me to let out a sigh. David's discussion of the subject was just as frustrating as the situation itself. He did not appear to be willing to take a stance, as he appeared to be caught between his mother and myself. In his words, "She's just trying to be involved," he would remark. "Maybe she's lonely." Whether I was lonely or not, I require boundaries. In order to take control of the situation, I decided to change the locks on the door. My desire to exert some control over my own home was so strong that I felt like taking severe action. On the following morning, while I was taking pleasure in a little period of tranquility with my cup of coffee, I became aware of the distinct sound of a key turning in the lock. My heart sank to it. When Margaret entered, she was clutching a brand new key in her hand. She remarked, "You changed the locks," feeling more amused than upset at the time. "Yes, Margaret, it is." I responded with a tone that was tinged with frustration, saying that we required some privacy. She huffed as she made her way to the kitchen as if nothing had happened from the previous moment. "Well, that's not very welcoming," she said. I had reached the point of no return. The fact that the locks had been changed has not discouraged her. All she has done is obtain a new key. My need was for a solution that was more conclusive. While conducting research into my alternatives, I came to the realization that in our state, repeated unwelcome incursions may be considered trespassing, even if they were made by members of the same family. I couldn't continue to live in such a state, despite the fact that it seemed severe. After consulting with a lawyer, I was informed that I had the ability to submit a petition for a protective order. After documenting Margaret's repeated intrusions and our attempts to set limits, I felt right in making this decision, even though it was not an easy one to make. Exactly as was anticipated, Margaret showed up the following morning. However, I was prepared for this time. As I handed her the court order, I observed the transformation of her expression from one of smugness to one of horror. She hushed under her breath, "You can't be serious," as her hands began to shake. "I am sorry, Margaret, but this has reached an unacceptable level," I asserted in a forceful tone. "We require our space." Before she stormed out of the room, she let out a scream that was a mixture of anger and disbelief. David was in utter disbelief. After a period of time, counseling, and a great number of conversations, he gradually came to an understanding of the impact that his mother's behavior had had on both my marriage and my relationship with him. From that point on, Margaret maintained her distance. It became a calm morning for us, and our home became genuinely ours. We fought a fierce war, but in the end, we were successful in regaining security for our shelter. The court injunction brought about a period of relative peace that lasted for a few weeks. During the time that I was nursing our child, there were no unexpected visits, no snarky comments about my cuisine, and no cold glares. There is only quiet. Although David made an effort to maintain a normal situation, the stress was high. Because of this, he was unable to move. Although I was aware that he did not hold me responsible, I was also aware that he was missing her. It is difficult to put into words the level of strain that accumulates when you are the one who is responsible for separating a family. After that, David arrived home from work one day not appearing sleepy but rather anxious. He was not exhausted. He took a seat for me at the table in the kitchen. He whispered, "She has hired a lawyer," and left the room. I blinked my eyes. What? It appears that she is attempting to contest the court order. Argues that it is not fair. You are accused of manipulating the judge. He asserts that you have lied about everything. I was attracted to him. Although I was not surprised that Margaret would go to such a low level, hearing it out loud had a different effect on me. I said, I documented everything, while attempting to maintain my composure. Every visit, every time she walked in without knocking, every time I asked her to stop. He indicated with a nod. It is true, I have faith in you. To add insult to injury, she is not only fighting it but also making it public. It turned out that Margaret had been telling everyone, including her friends, her relatives, and members at her church, that I was unstable, that I was controlling, and that I was keeping her away from her granddaughter out of spite. In addition to that, she started posting on Facebook. With enough ambiguity to prevent a legal challenge, but with sufficient clarity for everyone who knew us. Examples include statements such as, "It is extremely distressing when someone poisons your child against you." There are some women who marry only to divide, not to build. I did not give a response. No, I did not post. My defense was not forthcoming. I was aware that my response would only serve to reinforce her story. But then she went one step further than that. After some time had passed, I was at home by myself with the infant when I became aware of the doorbell. Only the sound of the bell luckily, and not the sound of a key. Taking a peek through the peephole, I felt a twisting sensation in my gut. It was Margaret, who was accompanied by a camera team and was holding a bouquet of flowers. It wasn't me who opened the door. She remained outside for 15 minutes, throughout which time she spoke at a volume that was audible to the cameras. "I just want to see my grandson," she said in the most endearing language she could muster. "Is it a crime to love your family?" After that, she made her way to her vehicle and drove away. After 2 days, a video found its way onto the internet. This was presented on a YouTube channel that specialized in family rights. The subject of the article: Grandmother blocked from seeing grandchild, daughter-in-law goes too far. A portion of the video went viral. Unknown individuals weighed in on the comments, which erupted. Some people referred to me as evil. It was said that Margaret was insane. On the other hand, everything was open to the public. Because of everything, my family was thrust into the spotlight, something we had not sought for. David attempted to have the video removed from the internet. But, once something is uploaded to the internet, it quickly spreads. I started receiving direct messages. Threats were made by some. Some were simply disagreeable. After that, Child Protective Services arrived. Someone had made a report, and I am curious as to who it was, stating that our infant was being neglected. The caseworker was courteous but still assertive. The house was inspected, a lot of questions were asked of me, notes were taken, and she looked at our kid, who was clean, fed, and smiling, and she did not find anything wrong with everything. Despite this, it rocked me to my very core. It dawned on me that this was not only the behavior of an overbearing mother-in-law. Margaret was eager to fight, and she had no qualms about getting her hands dirty. That evening, after the infant had gone to sleep, I sat down on the couch with David and whispered, "If she wants war, I'll give her one." The first thing that David did was remain silent. It was just him looking at me. When he finally spoke, he remarked, "You are not alone." After that, I began making preparations for my impending relocation. Initially, I decided to keep a journal. We receive every call, every message, and every suspicious car that is parked close to our home. I wasn't paranoid, rather, I was well prepared. It took me some time before I shared everything with David. With work, the visit from Child Protective Services, and his own feelings of guilt, he was already under a lot of stress. The affection he had for his wife and his devotion to his mother were at odds with each other. I didn't want to put a further burden on his shoulders. However, it was imperative that I be prepared since I had a feeling that Margaret was not yet finished. I was correct. After a week had passed, I went to pick up the child from daycare, and the instructor, Miss Carey, appeared to be in a state of discomfort. "Hey, Sarah," she murmured with a cautious tone. "Can we talk for a second?" My stomach became more constricted. As I followed her into the office, she took out a copy of the daycare pickup list and handed it to me. In addition, Margaret's name was included. Somebody had called and updated the list of people to contact in case of an emergency, and it appears that this had taken place over the phone. Did you approve this? Carrie inquired about it. No, I replied, my tone of voice icy. I didn't. She gave a slight nod. We found it to be quite peculiar. The reason we did not give him to her is because of this. She was present, however. It was Margaret who had arrived at the childcare. My child was the one she attempted to pick up. Then, after expressing my gratitude to Carrie, I took my son and drove directly to the police station. Even though I was shaking the whole time, I was able to complete it. A report was submitted, our restraining order was revised, and the daycare was included. They assured Margaret that they would get in touch with her and give her another warning. She ought to have been fearful about that. It did not happen. David was out with his buddies late into the night 2 nights later. When the electricity unexpectedly went out, I was at home taking care of the infant for a while. The entire home is dark. I became numb. Considering that it was storm season, the answer is no. I peered out the window. The lights on the porches of my neighbors were still on. On our own. I made a phone call to David. There is no response. The electric company was the one I called. There have been no reported outages? After that, I became aware of it. There was a gentle knock at the back door. Neither did I move. I did not take a breath. I dialed the emergency number. Although the police did not discover anyone when they came, they did discover some wires that had been cut near our breaker box. That had been messed with by someone. That evening was the one in which I set up the cameras. Only the genuine ones, not the imitations. Complete protection. This includes the backyard, the front entrance, and the side windows. Following 3 days, we were able to capture her on tape. 2:42 a.m. We found Margaret on our property, approaching the window of our infant's room. This is just standing there. Looking over. I went to my attorney and showed him the footage. We requested a comprehensive restraining order from the court. Although we already had one, this was taking things to an all-new level. It wasn't interference at all. This was a case of obsession. David was finally able to see it, every single thing. Beyond that point, there was no way to defend her. He severed all communication. He prevented her from calling him. He instructed her to never get in touch with him again. Despite the fact that we were disturbed, we felt that perhaps, just possibly, it would be the end. It was not the case. In the following few days, David's car was broken into while he was at work. Simply, the car seat was ripped and chopped to pieces, and a message was affixed to the dashboard that said, "You are allowing her to ruin everything." There was no theft occurred. Since there was no signature, we did not require one. The following week, we relocated. The new address was kept a secret from everyone, including extended family members. We upgraded our phones and updated our phone numbers. It felt like we were being protected as witnesses, but we had no other option. There were a few days of relative calm. There were no knocks, no messages, and no calls from Child Protective Services. None of it. Prior to the arrival of the letter. There is no return address provided. There were copies of court records contained within. Margaret had submitted a file for the rights of grandparents. A visitation lawsuit was filed against us. At that moment, I came to the realization that this was not solely about control. It was a genuine belief on this woman's part that she had a legal right to our child. This was not in the end. The opposite is true. When I read the newspaper, I couldn't help but cry. I won't lie. It wasn't just the surprise of being sued that did it, it was the cumulative effect of everything that had come before it. Due to the breach limits? The dangers that exist? The campaign of maligning? It was the visit from CPS. The incident of the childcare. The night that she stood outside the window of our infant's room. Now she was requesting that a judge compel us to allow her to re-enter into our lives, as well as into the life of our child. It seemed as if I was unable to take a breath. David's anger was on fire. I had never before witnessed him in such a manner. Within the kitchen, he punched the wall. He hurled his phone across the room in a wide arc. Above all else, however, he appeared to be betrayed. He was betrayed by the woman who had brought him up. He was very self-critical. It was also my fault that I had waited for such a long time to speak up for us. For the possibility that she will become more calm, because I chose to be courteous when I ought to have made a clear decision right from the beginning. Once more, we hired a lawyer. In this particular instance, it was not only about safeguarding ourselves. This was about ensuring the safety of our child. Margaret might be seen sitting in court dressed as if she were a saint. Cardigan in a light pink color, pearl earrings. She went so far as to bring photographs of herself holding our child and smiling, as if those brief moments were evidence that she was nothing more than a loving grandmother. In her testimony, she described me to the judge as unstable, possessive and jealous. She portrayed herself as a victim in her head. Stated that she was concerned about the health of her son. It was necessary for her to step in. I was sitting there, trembling with anger. Under the table, David clasped my hand in his. It was then our turn to speak. We provided everything, including the logs, the texts, the testimony from the daycare, the police reports, the investigation by Child Protective Services, and finally the footage. The one that occurred at 2:42 in the morning. In the darkness, she was standing outside the window of our baby's room. As soon as that film started playing, there was complete silence in the room. Margaret attempted to speak, to cry, and to convey all of these things, but it was already too late. It was impossible for her to argue her way out of this situation. Keeping a stony expression, the judge leaned forward. It is not the case that a grandparent who is devoted to their grandchild is denied access. Harassment, manipulation, and a hazardous disrespect for limits are all present in this situation. Despite her plea for grandparents' rights, he did not grant them. Following that, he imposed a restraining order that was permanent. Her ability to communicate with us or our child in any form, for any reason, was prohibited for an extended period of time. However, that was not the end of it. As it turns out, it is a criminal offense to file a fraudulent report with Child Protective Services. Additionally, it is illegal to tamper with a breaker box. As is showing up at a daycare center in an attempt to pick up a child for whom you do not have legal custody. A fortnight later, she was taken into custody. I was the first one to receive the call from him. As for the detective then? After that, the news station began making phone calls. Recall that her video had gone viral at the time. The question of what actually took place has piqued the interest of the public. And all of a sudden, those who had previously trusted her recognized the reality. She quickly became a source of humor in her neighborhood. There is a restraining order against the grandmother. Her congregation turned its back on her. After that, her friends stopped responding. During the day that she was taken in, David was quite quiet. He didn't take any joy in it. There was no gloating on his part. He did nothing but stare out the window for a considerable amount of time. His words were, "She was my mother. But you were right." We remained silent as we sat there. If only I could say that I had a positive feeling about the outcome. On the other hand, I simply felt exhausted. Enraged. It is hollow. I wish I had put more faith in my gut impulses earlier. I really regret that I let that courtesy lead us through agony. But we were able to escape. Attempting to exert control over us caused her to lose everything. To what end then? To demonstrate a point? To emerge victorious in a battle? It was only a permanent seat on the outside that she was awarded. Again, we relocated, but this time it was across the nation. The blank slate. The new city. Exactly 3 of us. No one enters our house without first being requested to do so. Not ever again, ever. My parents gave me 1 hour to leave the house when my brother set me up. Now my mom messages nonstop, asking for saving my brother from jail. Hello Reddit. I've been putting this off for a long time, but I thought it was appropriate to share after a recent conversation. This is how my brother destroyed my life, how my parents picked him over me, and how karma ultimately got the better of me. My family appeared normal from the outside when I was growing up. Middle class, 2 parents, a suburban residence, as usual. On the inside, however, it was a whole other matter. Since I was the eldest son, I was inevitably expected to be the responsible one, the decent kid, and the role model. And I was for the most part. I had good grades. I worked really hard, but I wasn't a genius. I was never in trouble. Nothing. No clashes, no detentions. I helped out around the house with everything from dishes to garbage removal, to watching my younger brother. Then there was Alex. My age was 2 years older than Alex's. And he had somehow learned the skill of manipulation, even as a child. This child could get away with lying about anything. Did he break anything? I was to blame. Was he caught slinking away? He would tell Mom that I made him fill in for me. Did he flunk an exam? Alex took my attention away from my studies. And they believed him each and every time. I used to believe that they were just kinder to him because he was the youngest. But as time went on, I understood that Alex was simply their favorite. What I did didn't matter. Even if he was a careless little snot and I was the ideal son, I was always expected to perform better. Not only did they think he was superior to me, but they also believed him to be so. We were constantly compared by Mom. "Why can't you be more like Alex?" "Yes, Mom. He is a pathological liar in addition to being incredibly amiable and charming." "What about Dad?" He remained silent. However, whenever he did, it was always frustrating to me. "You're older. You ought to be more responsible. Do you imply that I should just let him bully me?" They had more than one favorite in Alex. He could not be touched. The pivotal moment. I had given up on attempting to win their approval by the time I turned 16. I wasn't disobedient in any way. I simply gave up trying. Gave up hoping they would hear my side of the story. And gave up on ever having a fair chance. Ceased to think that I would ever be sufficient, regardless of what I did. I became reticent. To reduce the amount of time I had to spend at home, I took a part-time job after school. I spent more time at the library, either reading for pleasure or studying. What about Alex? He was having a good time. Leaving covertly at night. Returning home intoxicated or high. Stealing cash from my room, Dad's wallet, and Mom's pocketbook. Spending time with the most repulsive individuals. Naturally, though, none of that was an issue, since Alex was the favored child. And me? I was merely used as a scapegoat. Furthermore, I was unaware of how bad things were going to get, despite my belief that I could manage it. The lie that destroyed everything is up next. The deception that ruined everything. I had become accustomed to taking the blame for stuff I didn't do by the time I was 16. At that time, it was simply a fact of life. Alex suffers when Alex makes a mistake. Alex was the negative influence, and Alex was caught. Does Alex require a scapegoat? There's Alex. Even much I detested it, I had adapted to live with it, until Alex did something so horrible and inexcusable that it ruined my life. The ideal crime. For months, Alex had been stealing. Initially, he would steal minor items from stores, take money from Mom's pocketbook, and swipe cash from Dad's wallet in an attempt to get away with it. Then he became arrogant. He became friends with some of the older children. True scumbags. They forced him into more dangerous occupations, such as car breaking, pickpocketing, and theft. Then they broke into the home of a neighbor. I was not involved in it. When it occurred, I wasn't even at home. But guess who was held accountable when the police arrived at our door? Framing me for a crime I didn't commit as Alex's masterwork. That day, I felt something wasn't right as I walked in from school. Sitting in the living room were Mom and Dad. Mom seems to have shed a tear or two. Dad's jaw was clenched and his arms were crossed. What about Alex? Alex appeared to be the victim as he sat there, looking little and afraid. Dad threw my backpack to the ground at that point. "Alex, what the devil is this?" I took up my backpack and opened it, looking down in confusion. I felt sick to my stomach. Cash remaining in an envelope, a pair of watches, and a gold bracelet were found inside. My heart was racing when I gazed up at them. What on earth is this? I don't own this. "Don't mislead us," Mom cried out. Dad gave a head shake. "Today the police arrived. Last night someone broke into Mrs. Turner's home. She claimed to have seen someone moving stealthily. Can you guess who fits the description?" I looked across at Alex. He refused to give me a glance. "Tell them I didn't do this, Alex." Playing the part of an Oscar-winning actor, he simply gazed at the ground. He muttered, "Alex, I saw you sneak out last night." I didn't want to believe it. I considered. Perhaps you were meeting a female, I thought. However, today I discovered this thing in your bag. I was furious and trembling. "You're telling lies." Mom broke down in tears. Dad simply gave me the look of someone who doesn't care about me. A criminal was not raised by me. Then came the words that permanently altered my life. "Stow your belongings and leave. Discarded as waste." I assumed that they were bluffing and would recognize their error in a few hours. However, no. I had an hour to pack, they said. 1 hour. No inquiries, no trial, no second chances. Alex had a smug little smile on his face as he watched me pack in the hallway. I desired to eject his teeth. However, I was aware that they would actually call the police if I touched him. Mom was still crying when I left the room. Dad didn't even bid us farewell. And Alex, He simply triumphantly stood there. I realized then that I would never be able to return. No place to go. No one to assist. For the first several nights, I slept on a friend's couch. I then began crashing at the rear of the convenience store where I was a part-time employee. Mr. Patel, the proprietor, was a saint. As long as I arrived on time for my shifts and didn't cause any issue, he allowed me to sleep in the storage room. There was nowhere else for me to go. Mom didn't call. Dad never showed up. Alex? He must have been having a great time celebrating his win. And me? I had to learn how to live by myself. The first difficult lesson is that you must preserve yourself. I hoped that they would realize their mistake. My mother would call me crying and ask for forgiveness one day. That my father will come to the realization that he threw away the wrong son. That Alex would make a mistake and people would be able to see him for who he truly was. However, that day never materialized. I saved every dime while working 2 jobs. Additionally, I had saved up enough money to rent a small apartment by the time I was 18. There wasn't much, just a single room with a folding chair and a mattress on the floor. It was mine though. And I gradually began creating a life for myself. A life without them. Next up, the knocking of karma. It never occurred to me that I would hear from them again. However, the truth was eventually revealed years later. Everything changed at that point. I had started my life from scratch by the time I was 18. It wasn't simple. During the day I worked in a warehouse, and at night I worked at a gas station. The only furniture I had in my small studio apartment was a folding chair and a mattress on the floor. I had to choose between food and rent on certain evenings, so I went to bed hungry. But what do you know? I owned it. There was nobody for me to answer to. I have no one to control. Nobody holds me accountable for things I didn't do. And I felt free for the first time in ages. However, the universe chose to reveal something lovely to me just when I believed that my past was behind me. Because, guess what? At last Alex was apprehended. And nobody was there to take the fall this time. The golden child's fall. It all began when my aunt called me at random. I nearly dismissed her name when it appeared on my phone because I hadn't spoken to any of my family members since they threw me out. However, my curiosity overcame me. I grabbed it. "You're not going to believe this, Alex," was the first thing she said. Yes. But I did. Since I was well certain that Alex would crash and burn, I simply didn't think it would occur that quickly. Alex had been stealing for years, it turned out. What began as minor shoplifting turned into credit card fraud, identity theft, and even the writing of counterfeit checks. And he was caught red-handed this time. When Alex was arrested, Mom and Dad's idyllic life fell apart. The entire deck of cards fell apart. Mom and Dad were ashamed. Their home was visited by the cops. All of a sudden, everyone in the neighborhood realized that their ideal son was a crook. His lawyer was not inexpensive, as they had to pay for it. Alex was facing real jail time. And you know what? This time, his false tears didn't work. Alex was blameless, for the first time in his life. What about my parents? They had to acknowledge that their destruction of their real son had been pointless. The first interaction in years. My mother sent me a message a week after Alex was arrested. I can still picture my hands shaking as I stared at my phone. It had been years since she had spoken to me. She was now extending her hand. I inhaled deeply before opening it. "Mom. Can we talk, Alex? I know it's been a while." Something inside of me told me, "No, let's see where this goes," even if I should have disregarded it. So I answered, "Me. What would you like?" And her response, "The most predictable garbage ever, huh? We need your assistance." The narrative of the tears. Instead of seeing her at her place, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. I had no intention of returning there. She appeared older, exhausted, and quite stressed when she first entered. And what did she do first? She started crying. "We made such a mistake, honey, Alex." I took a drink of my coffee. Indeed. She used a napkin to dab at her eyes. Alex came clean about everything. He explained to us how he had lied about everything, including you and the heist. I reclined. "And the reason you're here now is..." "What? Do you want your mess fixed by me?" She cast her gaze downward. "I'm drowning in legal bills, along with your father. Even though we have loans, they are insufficient. Alex too. He might end up in prison if we don't assist him. I waited for the punchline while I sat there. And indeed it arrived. We were hoping you might be able to lend us some money, Alex, my love. That was it. I was unable to contain myself. I chuckled so loudly that everybody looked at me. I then leaned forward and gave her a direct look. Let me clarify this. You ripped me out of your life, tossed me out when I was 16, and dubbed me a criminal. And you suddenly need me now that your true criminal kid is in trouble? She appeared ashamed. Alex, please. You're his brother. I gave a headshake. You used me as a scapegoat. I am now your fallback option. And Mom, I have something to tell you. I have stepped down from that role, abandoning them to the ruin they made. One final plea was made by her. We risk losing the house if we don't receive the money. I inhaled deeply. I then gave her a direct look and finally uttered what I had been wanting to say for years. I have already assisted you once. It wasn't appreciated by you. I will not repeat that error. I then left. The ultimate result. Alex was arrested. It will only last a few years. However, enough to eventually remove that arrogant expression off his face. The house was lost by Mom and Dad. It turns out that they went broke because they were so preoccupied with protecting Alex's ass. I didn't talk to them again. And me? I continued to construct my life. An actual one. One in which I wasn't someone's backup plan, their punching bag, or their ATM. And I felt calm for the first time in my life. Family, according to some, is forever. But me, family in my opinion, is earned. And I never got my money back from them. I haven't given my family much attention in years, and to be honest, I was better off without them. After severing connections, I concentrated on starting over. I eventually began my own business after moving to a larger city and working extremely hard. Just a little contracting business, nothing special. I created something I was proud of, compensated my employees well, and employed decent people. What about my family? I had no idea where they were. I didn't check in. They were never stalked on social media. I was never curious about their well-being. To me, they were ghosts. Until one of those spirits returned to haunt me one day. The unexpected reunion. It took place on a Tuesday at random. Someone sat down across from me as I was reviewing some invoices at a coffee shop. Already irritated, I looked up. People simply showing up at my table without invitation bothers me. Then I caught sight of his face. Alex. Older. Rougher. Not the same. Gone was his arrogant golden child grin. His previously flawless appearance was worn down and exhausted. His expensive clothing was swapped out for inexpensive items from resale stores. I just stared at him for a moment, trying to comprehend that he was here. Then he grinned as if nothing had occurred. It's been a while, big bro. His narrative of sobbing. I reclined in my seat. I was unaware that we were still referring to one another by that name. As if this were some kind of weird high school reunion, Alex laughed and rubbed the back of his neck. Look, dude, I realize it's been a long time since we spoke. Sometime. As if he had completely forgotten that he had gotten me expelled from my own home and framed me for a crime the last time we met. I crossed my arms. Alex, what do you want? He shook his head and moaned. Observe. I made a mistake. I am aware of that. In prison, man, it transformed me. I had time to reflect. To think. Additionally, all I want to do is make things right. I waited for the joke while I looked at him. And indeed, it arrived. I've heard that you now own a business. I hoped you might give me a chance. Assist me in getting back on my feet. I laughed because I couldn't help myself. You want me to hire you? Seriously? Alex put on his most modest expression and nodded. Come on, man, we're brothers. Blood is blood, right? I put down my coffee and gave him a direct look. Blood was never the problem, Alex. It was you. His grin wavered. Come on, man. You can't still be mad about all that old. We were kids. I bent over. You weren't a kid when you stole from Mom. You weren't a kid when you committed fraud. And you sure as hell weren't a kid when you got me thrown out of my own home. Alex's facade of humility faltered a bit. Damn, man. You really just gonna hold a grudge forever? I picked up my coffee and got to my feet. Alex, I don't hold grudges, I just don't make the same mistake twice. I turned to go. He lost his temper at that point. It was the real Alex. You're still a fucking selfish prick, you know that? I halted and pivoted. The phony kind man persona has vanished. The real Alex was there. I knew you'd still be the same arrogant piece of shit. You always thought you were better than me. Always thought you were some saint. I simply gave a head shake. Nah, Alex, I don't think I'm better than you. I just know I'm not stupid enough to trust a thief. He sneered. You, Alex. You think you're some big-shot businessman now? You're just a bitter loser who doesn't know how to let go. With that, he bounded off. No farewell. Thank you for meeting me, but no. Just a grown-up man having a temper tantrum. Alex in his classic form. With a groan, I returned to my seat and grabbed my luggage. I realized then that my wallet was missing. Humans are constant. I went cold. I looked in the chair, my pockets, and beneath the table, but nothing was there. I dashed outdoors and looked around the street. Alex had already left. Then I simply burst out laughing. I'm laughing so hard I can't believe this shit. Because I had a realization at that very instant. Alex remained the same. Not behind bars. Not after all these years. Not after everything was lost. He remained the same jerk that he had always been. And I had almost permitted myself to think that he may be someone else. Fortunately, I never repeat the same error twice. The last farewell. I replaced my wallet, canceled my credit cards, and carried on with my life. Alex never got back to me. Failed to check on him. Didn't question his whereabouts. I was finished. Because of some individuals, they are not worthy of second opportunities. And now, there were no more individuals for Alex to use. Conclusion. It is common to hear the phrase, everyone deserves a second chance. However, I don't think so. Because of some individuals, they'll give it another go. Additionally, when you are handing them your wallet, they will steal it. Too lengthy, failed to read. I was falsely accused of a crime by my brother. I was expelled by my parents. When he was jailed years later, they learned the truth. They pleaded for my assistance. They should fuck off, I said. No regrets. Read it then. Was I too severe? Or did they receive just what they were due? Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.